There are estimated 285 million registered vehicles in the United States, and together they cover more than 3 trillion miles every year. On average, each vehicle lasts about 12 to 13 years, which means they'll need plenty of repairs and replacement parts throughout their life. That's why demand for aftermarket auto parts remains consistently strong. Over the past century, smaller local retailers have gradually been replaced by national chains. Napa and Advance Auto Parts are good examples, with stores across the US and even in other countries. But I think most would agree, O'Reilly and AutoZone stand above the rest. By most standards, they're the biggest, most recognizable, and most successful players in the market. And to be honest, both have two of the catchiest jingles ever made. Personally, I can't drive past an O'Reilly without that tune popping into my head. Same thing with AutoZone. If you've heard them, you probably know what I mean. Both jingles were created within a few years of each other, sometime in the late 1990s or early 2000s. They're just one small example of how competitive these two companies have been with each other for decades. So in this video, I want to compare O'Reilly and AutoZone across 5 key categories, starting with their family roots. Both started as family businesses, but in very different ways. O'Reilly followed a more traditional path, with the company named after the founding family. In 1957, Charles O'Reilly and his son Chub, both of whom had spent 25 years working at the same auto supply company, left to start their own in Springfield, Missouri. Their industry experience and connections helped them reach $700,000 in sales during their first year, which is roughly $8 million today. Over the next 25 years, the company grew steadily, opening stores across Missouri. By the 1980s, Chub's 4 children were all holding leadership positions. In 1995, Chub stepped down as president and was replaced by David O'Reilly, but he stayed on the board. In 2005, Chub passed away at 92, just 3 months after David retired, and leadership was handed over to 2 non-family members for the first time. AutoZone, on the other hand, was founded 22 years later, in 1979, by Pitt Hyde. It started as part of his family's larger wholesale business, Malone and Hyde, and was one of several retail ventures. Before launching the auto parts store, he had opened both a drugstore and a sporting goods store. But the auto parts store in Forest City, Arkansas, quickly stood out as the most promising. It was originally called Auto Shack, but the name was changed after a lawsuit by Radio Shack in the 1980s. In the 1990s, AutoZone and O'Reilly both took major steps toward becoming the corporate giants we know today. In 1986, AutoZone, along with its name change, was officially separated from Malone and Hyde and became its own independent company. Pitt Hyde continued running it for the next decade. In 1997, he stepped down as CEO and sold most of his ownership. So while neither AutoZone nor O'Reilly is still a family-run business today, both clearly started as one. Their early identity and market positioning were shaped during that time. That leads into the next comparison, what each company emphasizes. O'Reilly was built by 2 people with deep industry experience. In contrast, AutoZone was started by someone who knew retail, but not much about auto parts. That difference is still visible in how the companies operate. From day one, O'Reilly focused on knowledgeable staff and broad product selection. Today, they offer over 150,000 stock-keeping units, including hard-to-find parts that most other retailers don't carry. AutoZone's 2000 annual report even made a subtle jab at this approach, saying good for them when describing competitors who prioritize large inventories. O'Reilly is also known for promoting from within. According to them, most senior district and store managers started in lower positions, which helps ensure consistent service and product availability across locations. AutoZone, on the other hand, leaned into its founders' retail expertise. The focus was on cleaner, more organized stores and competitive pricing. One major advantage was Duralast, their private label brand launched in the 1980s, which allowed them to offer lower prices than traditional parts brands. Back then, auto parts stores had a reputation for being cluttered and dirty, often competing with literal junkyards. AutoZone used that contrast to stand out. Their retail-focused model shaped how they appealed to customers from the very beginning. These contrasting approaches have also shaped the types of customers each brand attracts. O'Reilly has always aimed for a balanced mix of DIY customers and professional mechanics, those fixing their own vehicles and those working on others for a living. AutoZone, however, has historically leaned more toward the DIY segment, but since the 1990s, they've made increasing efforts to serve professional customers as well. That includes building a network of hub locations to stock more parts and identifying the commercial market as one of their biggest growth opportunities. AutoZone believes they can eventually grow to 10,000 US locations, nearly 3,500 more than their current count. That's a bold target, especially considering how visible their stores are already in many areas. But to them, the market still has room. Today, the two companies are more similar than ever before. Their services, store layouts, and inventory strategies have gradually converged. Still, loyal customers may spot differences in service quality or part availability based on their local experience. For those who've shopped at both, the comparison often comes down to small but noticeable differences. That's why feedback matters. Which store do you prefer, and what stood out most to you? How have your experiences changed over the years? With that, the next area of focus is size and performance, financially and operationally. Before comparing size, it's important to recognize how successful both companies have been. O'Reilly and AutoZone are Fortune 500 companies, instantly recognizable even to people who don't drive. Most notably, neither has ever posted a loss, with net income rising nearly every year since records began. Their business model is resilient. When the economy slows down and people can't afford new cars, they're more likely to fix the ones they have. That drives demand straight to companies like these. AutoZone went public in 1991, followed by O'Reilly in 1993, just 2 years apart. Investors in either company have likely seen strong returns. In fact, both have ranked among the best-performing stocks on the market during that time. AutoZone stock has increased by 58,000%, giving it a market value of around $70 billion. Remarkably, O'Reilly has done even better, up 65,000%, with a current valuation close to $90 billion. Despite starting 22 years earlier, O'Reilly was still a small regional chain in Missouri when AutoZone, then called AutoShack, opened its first store. But AutoZone had a national expansion strategy from the start, offering lower prices through economies of scale. That aggressive growth helped them open 500 stores in their first 10 years. In comparison, O'Reilly opened their 100th store the same year AutoZone reached 500. But in the decades that followed, O'Reilly became the more aggressive of the two. Today, their sales and number of locations are nearly equal. Still, AutoZone has around 1,000 more stores in total. Most of that gap comes from international expansion. AutoZone opened its first store in Mexico in 1998 and now operates nearly 800 there. O'Reilly didn't enter Mexico until more than 20 years later and still runs fewer than 100 stores in that country. Outside of Mexico, O'Reilly entered Canada at the end of 2023, while AutoZone has operated in Brazil since 2012. Neither is truly a global brand, but AutoZone clearly has a broader international footprint.
Now let's look at how each company has grown over time. The key difference here is that O'Reilly has relied more heavily on acquisitions, while AutoZone has focused more on opening new stores under its own brand. Both companies started in roughly the same region, just a few hundred miles apart. But when it came time to expand nationwide, O'Reilly often chose to enter new markets by acquiring existing competitors and rebranding them. One major example was in 1998, when O'Reilly nearly doubled its size by acquiring High-Low Auto Supply for $48 million, adding 182 stores across Texas, Louisiana, and California. Then in 2008, they almost doubled again by spending about $1 billion to buy 1,300-plus stores operating under different names across 12 states. The most comparable acquisition by AutoZone also happened in 1998, when they bought Chief Auto Parts for $280 million. That deal brought them 560 stores, mostly in California, quickly strengthening their presence in a key region. To be clear, both companies have made several acquisitions over the years, but the pattern is clear. O'Reilly has been more dependent on mergers and acquisitions, while AutoZone has leaned more toward organic expansion. Chances are, if you have an O'Reilly in your town, it might have once been a different auto parts store, and the same could be true for your local AutoZone. So the last comparison isn't just about size, it's about how they got there, and that speaks volumes about each brand's long-term strategy. Let me know, do you think they're becoming more alike over time, or do the differences still matter when you walk through the doors?
Overall, O'Reilly and AutoZone have grown into two of the most dominant names in the auto parts industry. Their long-running rivalry, different starting points, and contrasting strategies have shaped who they are today. While both began as family-owned operations, neither is family-run anymore. Still, their original values, industry expertise at O'Reilly, retail focus at AutoZone, are reflected in how they serve customers even now. They've both made acquisitions, opened thousands of stores, and built strong reputations. AutoZone went for aggressive early growth through scale and pricing. O'Reilly caught up later through strategic acquisitions and internal development. Despite having different paths, they're now closer in size and operations than ever before. The international footprint is another point of contrast. AutoZone moved beyond US borders sooner and with greater scale. O'Reilly only recently followed. And while both brands offer similar services like oil recycling or battery replacement, many customers still see clear differences in product selection, pricing, and service. Those impressions are shaped by local experience and store leadership, which can vary from place to place. I had originally planned to include more about other chains in this video, but there was already enough to cover with just these two. So now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about O'Reilly versus AutoZone? Are they starting to look and feel more alike? Or are there still noticeable differences? When you need a part or just help with your vehicle, which one do you go to? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching.